All right, everybody, welcome back to the Business Roundtable Podcast. You're catching me on a cold day. I'm getting over it, but I wanted to bring another episode to you guys this week, and I'm so glad to have a brand new guest, Cameron Meredith. See if I'll get through this. Everybody, bear with me. But Cameron has come on, and he's a part of ADU West Coast, which we're going to talk a little bit about today on the podcast about how do you scale smart? How do you build a thriving business? In this case, Cameron's been working on ADUs, particularly here in Southern California. And we're going to talk about the challenges of growing a construction business, right? And all the things that come with it. So welcome to the podcast, Cameron.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You have worked with homeowners and folks that maybe not be that are project managers, knowing how to navigate through these processes from business systems, because we're going to talk about a little bit about systems that you use, how you've been a leadership in growing them, your team. We were just talking right before we recorded this, kind of the future of ADU development. And for those of you that haven't been around or haven't been paying attention here in Southern California, about so it's a massive fires here over the last month or so, month and a half. We're in March here recording this episode of 2025. But as I met Cameron and we were talking, we had a shared passion on business growth, leadership, operational efficiency. That's some of the things I look at as steward your business. Although I don't do with ADUs, I deal with people. But for those that are just getting to know you, Cameron, share a little bit of background about how you got into ADU West Coast and what led you to starting this company.
Yeah. Well, first off, thanks again. And I'm happy to be here to share kind of my experience and I guess what I've gone through as an entrepreneur. But I am from Huntington Beach, California. So born and raised in Southern California. Went to college in the Midwest, came back, and I had a couple different jobs. I was one of those people, I really did not know what I wanted to do even after college. So it was always sales. So I was always really good at sales. I had some sales jobs that I absolutely hated. But one thing that I did take into consideration, they were all pretty large, either corporations or businesses. So I took those same systems they had for sales, right, or management, because my other jobs was management. And I applied that to real estate when I started doing real estate. So really my background is, once I found out kind of what I wanted to do, I was a residential realtor. As you know, that's pretty much self-performing everything. I mean, you can have coaches and this and that, but it's really how hard you work and how many leads you get in. From there, I was doing a couple investment stuff. I met some construction guys who are actually my partners now. One does architectural design. His brother's a structural engineer in GC. So I formed a group with them in 2020. We'd been doing flips and stuff like that before then, but really in 2020 is when the law changed for ADUs. So we took our same concept as far as design build for construction and doing the design in-house, and we just did that same concept with ADUs. And now, we've grown pretty large. We're just LA, Orange County, but we do anywhere from 20 to 30 projects a year. So pretty good volume as far as locally here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a number of projects you're covering this area. And we talked a little bit about processes and project management and how you maintain efficiency. You want to expand a little bit as you're growing the business, bringing different people in. Talk a little bit about how you've been expanding the business, be able to take on that many projects.
Yeah, so I think it's number one, is really important to have a really good team that knows what they're doing, and I think delegation's huge. One of the things I've learned is definitely defining roles, right, and really honing in on who does what their roles are, what their roles are not, so we can keep people in their lane. That's been really important, and then also, I know last time we talked, I think having a good software, whether it's CRM for sales, or having a good project management software. I know we use a construction-specific software called BuilderTrend. I have nothing but great things to say. I was actually just in at the Builder Convention in Vegas last week, and I met some of the guys there. We're going to do a podcast actually on Friday. So
awesome.
But to that point, they've integrated everything from invoicing to budgeting all the way to project management, pictures, to do. So we've really systemized everything that we do within that system. And I think a big part of that is training those people on how to use the system, right?
Right.
A system can be as great as it can be only if the people are actually trained on using it and using it properly. So that's one thing I've been doing is training people and really getting them involved, both our employees and our clients. Because for us, one of the big things was like, hey, I don't want text messages at 8 at night on a Saturday or Sunday. Nobody does.
Yep.
So we do everything through the system. The clients have a capability on an app or a desktop. They can send everything through there, but that way everything is categorized, filed, and we know how to react and respond to them in that way. So I think training has been huge, and then obviously finding something that works for you as far as software.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think you've hit on a couple different things there. I mean, so what I hear is you being able to scale this, Cameron. You looked as a business owner, you looked at systems outside of rather than creating it ourselves, right? You could try and create it yourself, but obviously that takes a lot of time, and there's resources outside of you, so you can focus on what you guys do best, is actually building the ADUs themselves, not developing a whole system to try and track all of that.
100%. And for me, my goal has been growth and expanding. And one day I want to expand and sell ADUs, whether it's plans or prefabricated ADUs out, all over the country. That's kind of my end goal. So only way to do that is set up systems and have some processes in place. That way, it's the same model no matter where you go.
Yeah, I think it's so wise. The reason I have people like you on the podcast, Cameron, here is so that people can learn what's working and what's not working. And if you're not implementing a system or processes like that, what you found here that works well in your specific industry, you're limiting yourself. And I think you're able to scale much quickly. I mean, we're here in 2025. You started in 2020, and it sounds to me like you've had continual growth over those years by applying, lessons learned.
100%. Yep. And I think another big portion of this, especially I'm just talking for my industry, but it relates to any industry. I think setting expectations is huge with a client, especially with construction, right? And the way we do that is, again, we do everything through the software. That way everything's in writing. Hey, look, we went over this day. We went over this contract. Here's what it says. And as well as updating the client. Our software has daily logs. So we go in and we say, hey, we had this inspection today. We didn't pass inspection because of X, Y, Z. Here's some pictures of that. So that way, they don't feel out of the loop, even though they live there. But there's so much behind the scenes that goes on with construction. We could not be working for 4 days, but we could be going to the city, getting stuff approved or whatnot, right? And if we don't have that communication, that's when these, relationships kind of go south, when there's not a lot of communication, especially with something as construction, where a lot of people really don't understand the full capability of what we're doing.
Oh yeah. And how much I've been, I've worked in other industries too, Cameron. Like you're saying, communication is really key. You're leveraging a system here, but you're also training your people. Because I know that I've worked with other folks where it's like radio silence. You don't know anything, good or bad. It's just, I don't know. I'm in the dark. So you're leveraging your system, what I hear you saying, and you're training your people to make sure they're inputting the right information, following up accordingly with your clients.
100%. Yeah. And I will say it hasn't been easy to train, especially a lot of these construction guys. I mean, some of them aren't even great with phones.
Yeah.
But again, it's sitting down with them and saying, hey, this is how we do it. It's going to be way easier for you once you find out. But I think now they've kind of gotten the hold of everything, and they even realize, hey, this is the best way to do this.
Yeah. So to your point, Cameron, I think it's when you have different people, I think, they say generations certainly adapt to different technologies, but I think it's not always the case, not only generations. I think that there's certain people just, resistant to technologies or something. So what would you say to a business owner that's saying, okay, it's one thing to have the system, like you said, find a pretty good well-tested system. But like you said, the other part I heard you say was you've got to train your people to use the systems, to leverage the system. So what has been your experience in training and getting those people up to speed? You kind of talked a little bit about it, but go a little bit more into what does that look like? Because a business owner, sometimes I think they feel like I got a system and it should just work out of the box. And like, boom, everything works 100%. And it doesn't, in my experience, that's not reality. It takes a while.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It takes a long time. One thing BuilderTrend has is some really informal videos, and their customer support is in Nebraska, so they're very quick to answer the phone. But I do weekly meetings, beginning of the week and the end of the week, to kind of figure out what people's tasks are, and then do we complete those tasks. And it's not micromanaging, it's just figuring out where we're at with these projects. You can imagine I have 20 to 30 projects. I need to know what's going on pretty much throughout every day. So that's the only way. And I will say, it really has been just getting my people out of the habit of texting, right? And I say, hey, put it in BuilderTrend, put it in the software. And really, it's just been constant harping. And I really bought into it, which is the thing. And one thing I've realized, and I've talked to BuilderTrend a lot because they deal with a lot of contractors. They say the software is only as good as you make it, right?
Yep.
For any new owner, I'd number one, find out a great system that works for you. Number two, you got to buy in, and you got to have everybody buy in.
Yeah. Well, that leads to kind of this next part of the conversation of like, okay, so, is that continued leadership and team development on top of the system? You're working with, we talked a little bit about this, but like different personalities, and then, and you're adding new people in to different parts of the business, I'm sure, over time. And so how do you create, so training is one of them on the system, but how else do you create that cohesive high performance team, everybody kind of working together on the mission? We've got lots going on, and so that people aren't, creating more maybe drama or challenges than there needs to be. How do we reduce that and really create a positive environment with your team?
Yeah, for sure. So with construction, we do use a lot of subs. So these are individual business owners, right, that we're hiring out as these subcontractors. So they don't owe me anything. And, vice versa, right? I can use any other sub. But as I tell all my subs, I see this as a team, right? And just the other day, it's like, I told some guy, because I didn't want to go back and forth with a bunch of subs. I've used him a couple times, and I'm like, look, I don't want to go bid it out with a bunch of people. I trust you. I like you. Here's our budget. Can you do for our budget? And it was cut and dry. There was no drama. I didn't have to bid it out. And it was a little higher than what we wanted to pay. But I said, hey, look, that's cool. Let's go ahead and do this. Maybe on the next one you can help me out. So I think it's just having that open line of communication and not seeing this sub or worker as just, getting one job done. I'm looking for guys that we can grow with. I really don't care if I spend more money. Money is not really the bottom line for me. I think it's more of, can this person do the job? Do they have an insurance? Am I going to come back and have to do work, especially for me, because it's my license? So for me, I've built relationships. A lot of my guys that work for me, they've had long-term relationships with some of these guys. And really, it's just creating that cohesive team with the same vision. And, I always like people that I like to be around, but there's some people I'm like, hey, I just, we don't work well together. And in fact, that goes the same way for potential clients. And luckily, we're in a spot right now where we can kind of turn jobs down. Just the other day, make a long story short, I had to respectfully turn a job down just because I saw some signs and I knew that it probably wouldn't be the best working relationship. And I very respectfully said, hey, man, no worries. I just think you'd be better off, like, if you maybe found someone else for this job. And it was totally fine. But I think that's a powerful thing as well, because my job, you're in a year-plus relationship.
Yeah.
And if that goes south in the beginning and you end up with someone that's just arguing the whole way, it could really take up all your time. So I think that's really important, is walking away from the right people, whether it's a sub or an employee or, a potential client.
Yeah, you brought up some really good points there. I work with companies that both have subcontractors and employees, and they're just they're at the bottom at the end of the day, they're still all relationships. What I hear you say, Cameron, you're developing relationships. You want to work with those people that you know, you like, that you trust, right? And so it's how do you manage them? How do you take care of them? And I think what I heard you say, Cameron, is come from this long-term perspective. This isn't a one-time transactional experience, but we want to work together over the. We'll go further together if we can, look at it that way and not make it a one-off. Trying to maximize your dollars on the one, project, right? You're looking at this, and that's sounds to me like that's helped you grow and to build a group of contractors in this case that you can rely on, and they'll maybe prioritize your work over potentially somebody else because they know the relationship they have with you.
Exactly. Yeah, and we can count on them. And it's funny, we've actually had a couple clients in the last, I would say, 2 years who went with some other contractors, maybe went the cheaper route, right? And it ended up being a huge, huge deal for them. And we had to go fix some stuff. So also on the client side, right? Because these are big multifamily investors. They own a bunch of properties. It's true for a client too, to look at me and say, hey, I trust this guy. He might be a little bit more than other bids, but hey, do I really want to take that risk?
Yeah. I mean, I think to me, as looking at that, like your clients, like you said, putting them in the place of like, look, I've got the team, I've got the systems in place, the people that you can rely on. Unfortunately, I've heard some horror stories or seen some horror stories, particularly here in California, with a lot of people that have ADUs that are partly built, never finished. Contractors are gone, nobody communication. It unfortunately looks bad for the industry, and like you said, people like didn't really vet a little bit more the team that they could be working with.
Yep, 100%. And yeah, that's fun. It's interesting you said that. There was 2 companies last year. One of them, I forgot the names, but one of them, Northern California, they sold over $150 million from homeowners.
Yeah.
And
I mean, people that put all their savings into these.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was horrible. I couldn't imagine that happening.
Right?
Yeah.
So I mean, you've got, you're dealing with the homeowners and investors as clients here. And talk a little bit more. Is there any other challenges like you should, as a business owner, you should be considering when you mentioned about one potential like red flag, maybe with a potential client, but as a business owner looking at that, because sometimes people are driven, like, I just got to make that sale. And sometimes when you're in a sales mentality, you just sales, but then you're realizing what comes with that sale, So can you speak a little bit more about how you've been able to bring on kind of your ideal clients, those people that you really like helping, and kind of move those folks like, I'm not the best fit for you,
for
whether
sure.
investor or homeowner. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, one of my first jobs was selling solar to Solar City, which is now Tesla Solar. They got a bunch of money. It was a big corporate structure as far as the sales go. So I took all my sales, training from them, which was pretty good. So I do kind of a very similar process. Number one, I start with a phone call. I have about 15 lists of questions. I'll pull up the property on the Google map, figure out their why, which I think is huge. No matter what business, what is their reason for purchasing your product or service?
Yeah.
And then for us, number 2 is budget, right? Because, I talk to people all the time. That's like, hey, I want a 1,200 square foot ADU 2-story. And it's like, that's great. I'd love to build it for you. But what is the budget, right?
Yeah.
If it's $150K, it's impossible. So those are the main 2 points. Other than that, I'm getting some other discovery information. Now, I've been doing sales such a long time. I can kind of gauge on that call whether they'd be a good fit or not, just kind of by the way they react. And not everyone has the capability to do that. And trust me, there's a few that have slid by. But yeah, but the bottom line is I do a very thorough initial phone call. From that point, the next step would be doing a site inspection. We actually charge for the site inspection. So when we do that, it's not just a proposal. We actually give a visual ADU inspection report, very similar like a home inspection. We also include a plot map with a preliminary design on a satellite picture. So we're giving them a lot of value. What that does, though, it really weeds out the people who are serious or not. Because if they're going to pay $300 for us to come out and do that inspection, they're ready to go and they're dead serious, right? And we do credit that back if they move forward with us. But it's just like, hey, put some skin in the game if you're really serious about this. And I think that really kind of weeds a lot of people out. And then, the third line of defense is if I'm at the house, and this is what happened the other day. I just didn't feel like this meeting was going too great. The guy was arguing about the $300, which I already told him about. And I'm like, hey, look, I just told him, hey, don't worry about the 300. Here's the inspection report. But I just, regretfully think that we'd, be better off just not working with each other. So more of like, 3 lines of defenses. And I think, by then I've probably talked to them over a few hours and really kind of understand this person. And so I think that way the way we do it, we really do a lot of discovery and figure out the person both over the phone and in person. And like I said, if in person, if they get to the third stage and I figure out, hey, I just don't think it's a good fit, that's okay. They're not forced to work with me. I'm not forced to work with them as well.
Such good advice there, Cameron, to kind of consider. I like those kind of line of defenses to think about those things, because kind of a follow-up question I had here for you was like, how do you balance what you're doing at this high level kind of business strategy for the company, and then just the on the ground construction work? I mean, this has got to be challenging for you. Sounds like you've been building it, it's been working, but just kind of staying in that place of I'm looking at this overall strategy you talked about at the beginning of the podcast with on the ground work that needs to get done. But how have you found that balance?
Yeah, so I delegate, right? So I go to the construction sites, obviously, but I have a designated superintendent and project manager that handles certain areas. So that way, kind of like we talked about earlier,
Yep.
You're best when you have your guys specializing in whatever they do, or girls, whatever they do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I have one person who's a superintendent, they're going to be at the site inspections all the time, which funny, I mentioned you today, one of our guys is out, which is why I have to go. But usually the guys available, they're there. And like I said, I do it by area. So we have about 3 different project managers with different crews, all the same crews that we use, but those are different areas where they schedule. So we get a job, Long Beach, Lakewood, we have a crew there. If we do a job in like Orange County, South Orange County, we have another crew do that. Same thing for a little bit more as far as inland LA. But they're all guys I've worked with, a long time, all trustworthy people. And again, it's the same subs, same people we're using.
Yeah, you built those relationships, you've nurtured those relationships. People want to stay and work with you. I think that's super important, Cameron. I know we're getting close to the end of the episode of the podcast. So, what you mentioned briefly, but I want to give you an opportunity. What does it look like? What's kind of the future of ADU development in California and beyond as you're kind of looking forward? What's your take in the coming years here?
So a couple things. I just think the industry in general, I was just at the Builder Convention in Vegas, and it's the biggest in the world. And, I like going to those things to figure out, number one, what are the new products, right? Fire resistant stuff was big. Modular stuff is also big. I think the future of building is going to be different types of modular structures that you can connect or put together. I think we still have some great products there, but I just think it's going to get more advanced, and the cost is going to drive down. And I think we're going to see a lot more modular stuff. As far as ADUs, one thing and one trend I've been seeing, it's very big in California. I know you're in California.
Yep.
It's big in Washington. It's big in Oregon. It's big in Texas. You're starting to see every major city. It doesn't matter if it's a very little populated state. Like, for example, I went to college in Nebraska. Even in Lincoln, Nebraska and Omaha, Nebraska, they are starting to implement ADU rules. And no matter where you're at, if it's a downtown or a city, you're going to have density problems. And really the only way to provide more housing without, rezoning and tearing stuff down is building ADUs either in the backyard or out of garages. So the trend just continues to roll. I think, California, Oregon, Washington, Texas are on top of it as far as the regulation goes.
Yep.
But I just think, you're going to see all this stuff pretty much streamlined throughout every major city in California. And for us, just to not take too much time, what I find really rewarding of it, I'm from California, so I take pride in helping and building, housing for the state.
Yep.
One thing I also like, because we do investors and homeowners as far as build outs, I think I would say about 80% of the homeowner ones that we do for single family homes, that is all family members. So rewarding for me to have a grandma move back or a young adult. Because I mean, even right now, I mean, if you were to go buy a single family home just to see how ridiculous it is, it's pretty pricey. So I would say that's probably the best part for me, is just find it rewarding to move families together.
Man, you covered a lot just in a short period of time here, Cameron, because I think, talking about, we have to adjust. There's innovations that are coming, like you said. That's any business. You got to, if you only stick with the old ways and you don't see the new things, like you said, you're going to become irrelevant. You're like, if you're just like, well, we'll always build them this way. It's like, there's new things coming in. There's new ways of, like you talked about, using systems to document the work you're doing. And still, and at the end of the day, we still have people. We're using computer systems, but it's your subcontractors, it's your employees, it's your team that allows you to actually scale the business. And so what I've heard you say, what a key takeaways is, you've taken things that you've learned and then you brought in other insights from, conferences, from, from your building software and others, and you're infusing all those together to grow your company.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah. I mean, this is really cool to hear, Cameron. I hope everyone that's listening to this understands that. And if you're looking for somebody like Cameron that can help you, in this case with ADUs, it's a type of project that needs help, and you're somebody like, who do I talk to? How do I know that he's been able to do this successfully? You just have heard him walk you through how to do that as a business owner. Apply these principles so that you can actually grow your business in a similar fashion. Cameron, I'm going to put your contact information in the show notes, but just real quickly, how's the best way for folks to follow up with you if they've got questions on ADUs?
Yeah, so I think Instagram's the best. I have access to the ADU West Coast Instagram account, so if you guys want to follow us there, feel free, and I'll be able to get in contact with you. And then also, you have my cell phone, David?
Yep. Yeah. I think I'll all that. We'll put all that in there. And Cameron, thank you so much for being here. It's been great having you.
Well, I appreciate it. We'll be in touch soon, okay?
Yeah, thanks everybody. Appreciate you guys all joining us on the Business Roundtable Podcast. Until next time, take care, everybody. Thanks for listening.